Amitabha. Early in his white power days, Arno had sewn several swastikas on his jacket. On his head, he often bore several stitches. He later described himself as a drunk, lanky, tattooed and scarred, shaved-head neo-Nazi skinhead. His daily diet consisted of ramen noodles. He bought the cheapest ones he could find to have more money for his drinking. The only exception to this dietary routine was when, after cashing his weekly paycheck, he would go next door to McDonald's for a Big Mac. One payday, as was his routine, Arno visited McDonald's. But this time he froze in his tracks when he opened the door. Behind the counter, taking orders, was an older Black woman. Her radiant smile was unconditional and genuine. Looking back, Arno would later compare her smile to the sun, which shines impartially on everyone, quote, regardless of race, religion, politics, or who they love, end quote. The sun simply shines, just like the elderly woman smiled. Arno's reaction was not to smile back, but to become extremely uncomfortable. Here he was, trying to hate Black people. And now he was looking at a sweet elderly lady who, without saying a word, made his prejudice seem like a really stupid idea. After ordering and paying for his Big Mac, he grabbed it and hurried out. The following week, after cashing his paycheck, Arno went, as usual, to the McDonald's. Again, he saw the same woman taking orders. Not only did she recognize him, she remembered what he had ordered the week before. After confirming it was to be repeated, she asked how his day had been. Her natural friendliness threw him. Like the previous week, he paid for his food, grabbed it, and quickly left. Early the next week, Arno got a swastika tattoo on the middle finger of his right hand. Wanting to hurt people and make them angry, he planned to make a fist with his tattooed hand and hit them if they said anything. He hadn't thought about his weekly check cashing routine. When he opened the door to McDonald's on his next visit, he hesitated. There she was, smiling and taking orders. Struck with the realization that this was someone who he did not want to see the tattoo, Arno shoved his hand into his back pocket. He tried to think of another McDonald's nearby, but he couldn't. Besides, it was cold outside. Since he couldn't think of any other solution, Arno decided to keep his hand in his pocket. That way, she wouldn't see the tattoo. But his plan to keep his hand out of sight failed because he had to use it to get his money out and then give it to the woman. Arno said that when she saw the tattoo, she had looked at him like his grandmother used to when she caught him fighting with his little brother. Looking back at the tattoo, she asked, what was on his finger? Unable to make eye contact, Arno looked down and muttered that it was nothing. She waited until he finally looked up, and when he met her eyes, she told him that she knew that wasn't who he really is. He was a better person than that. That night, Arno got drunk, really drunk. Then he went out and attacked the first person he saw. He later explained that he wanted to get as far away from that singularity of humanity as possible. The experience haunted Arno for several years. He couldn't erase the memory of that sweet lady and what she had said. Not only wouldn't the seed of kindness she had planted deep within him fade, it was joined by another, then another, until the occasional seeds of kindness accumulated within him and even started to encroach on the seeds of hate. In time, Arno started letting go of those lingering hateful seeds. He stopped being a neo-Nazi, talking of a coming race war. In a complete turnaround, he founded Life After Hate, a nonprofit organization focused on helping people who leave hate groups. In 2012, his book, My Life After Hate, was published. When someone is doing everything they can to intimidate us, it's not easy to forgive them by smiling back warmly and saying kind words that will reach into the intimidator's heart. It would mean that the healing words have broken through and pierced the stiff armor of hatred. And yet, this sweet elderly woman with her radiant, all-inclusive smile, a mother's ability to see through a skinhead's facade, and a grandmother's ability to tell it just like it is, did that. She forgave his hatred, his prejudice, his wanting to hurt people. Maybe on Arno's first 2 visits, she noticed his indecision at the door before he entered, or how he bolted as soon as he had his food. Surely, she saw his hesitation and subsequent shoving of his hand into his pocket on his 3rd visit. And she certainly did not miss the way he stood in front of her, staring down at his steel-toed boots, because that was when she told him that what she saw was not who he really was. If we're fortunate, we grow wiser and more open as we get older, and hopefully, having experienced and seen more pain and suffering, become kinder. Kind enough to even see the potential buried under a neo-Nazi persona. Standing behind her counter, the elderly lady would have watched as he approached. An embodiment of hate dressed to intimidate. And what did she do? She smiled. Wholeheartedly and unconditionally. Her smile was an act of pure kindness, an act that we would normally deem insignificant. But hardly so to Arno, who compared the woman's smile to the sun, which shines impartially on everyone, regardless of who they are, regardless of who they were pretending to be. In Arno's case, that smile became extraordinarily consequential. It took several years for that single seed of kindness and forgiveness to bear fruit, but it did. When the woman smiled at Arno and spoke to him, she had no idea how he would react or if anything that she said would make a difference. It's like throwing a handful of chokeberry seeds onto soil where weeds are rampant. How many of our seeds will take root is not part of our calculation because we cannot control what happens to the seeds once we've sown them. As with the kindness seeds we plant, it's up to the conditions of where they land and what happens to them afterwards. We just keep planting. If Arno had received only one kindness seed, propagation could have taken innumerable lifetimes. But that single seed of kindness was joined by another seed, and then another, and yet another. Gradually, as more of these seeds accumulated and matured, they intertwined and grew stronger as they supported one another until the day there were enough of them to overwhelm the seeds of hate. Just as weed seeds will have little chance of survival in the face of stronger chokeberry ones, whether we are planting chokeberry or kindness seeds, they will grow and thrive when the conditions are right. So we can stop focusing on the harvest and instead focus on our planting. Okay, so how do we plant our seeds of kindness? We stop living in the past, repeatedly going over something someone said or did to us. We stop living in the future, imagining how we will get even for those past wrongs. Instead, we live in the present, where the opportunities to be kind lie. We forgive those past offenses and wrongs, and in doing so, see clearly what is now in front of us, opportunities to be kind. Possibly we see the hesitation in the eyes of an elderly man unsure of how to safely walk past a group of rowdy teenagers. Perhaps the anxiety of a parent trying to calm a crying child on a crowded plane. We might sense the exhaustion of a nurse working a double shift, or see the embarrassment of the woman who rounded the grocery store aisle too fast and ran her cart into ours. When we see their hesitation, their anxiety, their exhaustion, their embarrassment, we smile like that sweet elderly woman had smiled, unconditionally and wholeheartedly. Like the sun shining impartially on all. A smile, it seems so insignificant, but it had the power to prompt a neo-Nazi skinhead to hide his swastika-tattooed hand that he had been so proud of just moments before. Next came her willingness to forgive the harm he sought to inflict, and the courage to call him out, saying she knew he was better than that. Saying the right thing is challenging. Our mind needs to be calm, not filled with fear or doubt, to know what to say to reach someone who looks very different from us or seems overwhelmed by their situation or even downright threatening. We need to say what is kind in the sense of helpful, even when it may not be what the person wants to hear. Arno wanted people who saw him to be either terrified or furious. The last things he wanted were forgiveness, a smile, and kindness. But that's exactly what he got. The woman knew that what he needed was for someone to penetrate his swastika-tattooed skinhead veneer and say what his plain-spoken grandmother would have said, the truth. And when he heard the truth, that he was trying to be someone he wasn't, that truth was so profoundly accurate and so strikingly poignant that he got roaring drunk and staggering out. He beat up the first hapless person he saw. If we were asked to picture an image of kindness, we'd probably come up with someone smiling gently and speaking in a friendly manner. It's less likely we'd visualize someone looking us in the eye and bravely telling us what we needed to hear rather than what we were hoping to. But that's what kindness is. Accepting the responsibility due to our relationship or affinity with the individual. And then skillfully overcoming our imagined personal concerns in order to help the person be as good as they really are. Kindness takes a forgiving, compassionate, and courageous heart. Forgiving, because we need to let go of our fear and retaliation if we are to understand the pain the other person is experiencing. Compassionate, if we are to want another person's suffering to ease. And courageous, because we will have to accept the outcome, whatever it may be. The other person could just turn and walk out the door because they aren't ready to be helped. Kindness is tirelessly planting those seeds, even when we have no idea when or how many or even if any will take root and grow. It is focusing on the planting, which we control, not the harvest, which we cannot. Amitabha.